Imagine a single artillery shell doing the work of hundreds, striking faster than warning, leaving no room for escape. To appreciate the magnitude of this shift, consider the legacy it overturns. For more than a century, artillery reigned as the brute force of battlefields. Picture endless rows of cannons, relentless barrages turning landscapes into moonscapes, thunder rolling for hours on end. During the First World War, entire regions of France and Belgium were transformed into fields of craters, their forests and towns erased beneath the ceaseless pounding of shells. That was the old doctrine: mass firepower, overwhelming and unstoppable, a philosophy born in the trenches, refined in the cauldrons of Stalingrad and Kursk, and exported to conflicts from Korea to Vietnam. But this crushing power came at a terrible cost. Feeding those guns devoured fortunes. Supplying them meant hauling thousands of tons of shells just to flatten a single target. The price wasn't just in resources, it was in lives and cities erased, civilians swept away, entire neighborhoods reduced to dust for the sake of a handful of enemy troops. In the Battle of Verdun, for example, over 1 million shells fell in a single week, yet the front lines barely budged. The city of Dresden, annihilated by concentrated Allied bombardment in the Second World War, epitomizes both the destructive potential and the tragic consequences of indiscriminate artillery fire. Then, everything changed. The old formula, more guns, more shells, more victory, began to fail. Every shot drained the treasury. Sophisticated radars and instant counterattacks turned massed batteries into easy prey. Suddenly, brute quantity no longer guaranteed success. Commanders faced a crisis. It was not enough to simply build bigger guns or fire more shells. Artillery needed a revolution. Something radical, something that would overturn the logic of warfare, a way to strike with precision, speed, and near-invisible warning, crushing an enemy before they could react. Ignoring this shift is not just a tactical mistake. It is a strategic blunder, one that wastes resources, clings to obsolete doctrines, and risks defeat at the hands of adversaries who are quietly rewriting the rules with smarter, faster, more connected weapons. To understand how artillery reached this breaking point, and why the old ways no longer worked, we need to rewind, back to the moment when firepower alone was no longer enough, and the search for a true revolution began. Let's retrace the journey that brought artillery to the edge of obsolescence, and see what forced commanders to rewrite their playbook for a new era of war. For close to a century, the thunder of massed artillery decided wars. Endless barrages, hundreds of guns firing in unison, scorched the earth, scarring battlefields and breaking armies. Their doctrine was simple: drown the enemy in relentless fire. This was the firewall, forged in steel and smoke during the great wars of the 20th century. But victory came at a staggering cost. To destroy a single bunker or a hidden tank, commanders unleashed hundreds of shells. Local offensives demanded thousands of tons of ammunition, enough to choke supply lines and bring entire armies to a grinding halt. The more fire you brought, the heavier the burden became. During the siege of Leningrad, for example, Soviet and German artillery exchanged millions of shells, yet for years neither side could decisively break the deadlock. Brute force was a double-edged sword. Precision was poor. Each missed shot meant more collateral damage, ruined towns, civilian deaths, and friendly fire. Fear of harming their own troops kept gunners from firing near allies or inside cities. Firepower became both shield and liability. In the Vietnam War, American artillery units sometimes hesitated to fire for fear of hitting friendly forces hidden in the dense jungle, leading to missed opportunities and increased casualties. Then the enemy adapted. Counter-battery radars appeared, tracking every barrage to its source in mere seconds. Now, every massed salvo turned into a beacon, inviting swift, deadly retaliation. Artillery crews were forced to fire and run, abandoning the slow, methodical tactics that defined past victories. As adversaries improved their reconnaissance and precision, the old ways backfired. Traditional barrages lost their edge. Defenders survived and struck back with deadly accuracy. What once crowned artillery as king now risked turning it into a death trap. The doctrine of overwhelming fire became a trap for those unwilling to change. Commanders faced a brutal truth: minor adjustments would not suffice. Clinging to attritional, imprecise warfare threatened vast casualties, wasted resources, and possible defeat. The battlefield now demanded more than brute strength. It demanded a revolution in how artillery was used. So how do you transform the very heart of warfare, making every shot count and every sensor a weapon in its own right? The answer lay in a radical rethinking of firepower, one that fused technology, information, and speed. This was the dawn of Fire Barrage 2.0. Picture artillery that no longer fires blindly, but chooses each target with intent, striking only what truly matters and sparing everything else. How did we leap from indiscriminate barrages to this nearly surgical precision? Welcome to the age of Fire Barrage 2.0. This revolution is not about building ever larger cannons or packing in more barrels. It began with the creation of guided shells and the science of smart targeting, a radical break from the traditions of massed firepower. The first seeds were sown in the late Cold War, when Soviet engineers unveiled the Krasnopol shell. It was a laser-guided round that could track a single vehicle with uncanny accuracy. Suddenly, artillery crews could hit a moving tank with their first shot from more than 20 kilometers away. The idea that one shell, rather than dozens, could decide a battle was startling, and a hint of what was to come. But that was only the beginning. As electronics improved, guidance systems became more resilient and harder to jam. All-weather targeting became possible. New shells blended laser precision with GLONASS satellite navigation, creating the fabled fire-and-forget effect. Now, a target's precise location is entered before launch, and the shell guides itself in. The soldier holding the laser needs only seconds to mark the target, then can vanish before the round even lands. Consider, for instance, the American Excalibur shell, which uses GPS guidance to strike within a few meters of a designated point, day or night, in any weather. In Afghanistan, Excalibur rounds allowed coalition forces to destroy Taliban positions nestled in crowded villages, minimizing civilian casualties and sparing local infrastructure. These advances are not limited to superpowers. Nations from South Korea to Israel have fielded their own precision-guided artillery, transforming regional conflicts with smaller, smarter arsenals. Yet even the smartest ammunition is only half the equation. Enter the drones, compact, silent, and networked. Models like the Orlan 10 and its successors transform the battlefield into a living map. They sweep low and slow, scanning for hours, relaying live video and target coordinates straight to command centers. Each drone is both a scout and a potential laser designator, nearly impossible to spot or shoot down in time. The true breakthrough comes when dozens, or even hundreds, of these drones swarm together. Linked by encrypted data networks, they flood Central Command with fresh targeting information every moment. Artificial intelligence now digests this flood of data, sorting, prioritizing, and matching targets to the right artillery units almost instantly. In seconds, software generates fire missions. Multiple guns, sometimes scattered across the entire front, coordinate their shots. Where once an entire battery might have fired for minutes, now only 1 or 2 shells may be needed to destroy a target. The result is a tempo and efficiency unheard of in earlier wars. This is speed, lethality, and resourcefulness at a new level. The side mastering these networked weapons can destroy more, faster, with far fewer rounds expended. Those who fail to adapt risk being swept aside, overwhelmed before they even realize they are under attack. Historical parallels abound. During the Gulf War, coalition forces used precision munitions and real-time surveillance to obliterate hardened Iraqi artillery and command posts. In the recent Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, drone artillery coordination allowed Azerbaijani forces to systematically dismantle Armenian fortifications, often with minimal warning and devastating psychological effect. Yet, this transformation is only as powerful as the systems connecting each piece. What happens when data, not just firepower, becomes the arsenal? What becomes of war when an enemy can see everywhere, strike anywhere, and rewrite the very rules of battle? Imagine the summer offensive of 2025. In barely 30 minutes, hundreds of hostile bunkers, artillery units, and supply caches are identified, confirmed, and annihilated with clinical precision. Each strike lands before defenders can even react, each target vanishing from the map in moments. Gone are the days when artillery, drones, and command posts act as separate entities. Now, fused by real-time data, they operate as limbs of a single living organism. Defenses that once relied on concealment or dispersal are wiped out instantly. Commanders disappear, and the webs of communication unravel in seconds. On the receiving end, morale shatters. Soldiers glimpse the awful truth. Nowhere is safe, not under foliage, within dugouts, or behind thick concrete. The networked system stalks them at rest, detects movement, traces signals, and strikes faster than any order can be issued. Counter-battery duels, once regarded as the brainy chess matches of artillery, become lopsided hunts. Drones linger overhead, silently watching. Whenever enemy guns open fire, they are exposed, targeted, and destroyed by friendly artillery before their first shells find a mark. Urban warfare is transformed beyond recognition. Instead of razing entire city blocks, precision strikes surgically remove hostile firing points. Assault teams advance with newfound confidence, infrastructure survives, and civilians are spared from the old, indiscriminate devastation. Consider the Battle of Mosul, where coalition and Iraqi forces struggled to minimize destruction in a dense cityscape. With next-generation targeting and networked munitions, future battles could see armies neutralizing threats hidden in a single apartment while sparing the building itself. Yet the sharpest weapon is psychological. The enemy feels constantly watched, naked, powerless, and hunted. Panic spreads, desertions multiply, discipline collapses. The will to fight breaks down long before the last round is fired. In the Falklands War, Argentine positions came under relentless British naval fire, demoralizing defenders. But with today's technology, the fear is omnipresent, unceasing, and inescapable. Attempts to counter this doctrine, jamming signals, hiding assets, dispersing forces, fail. The networked system adapts in real time, closing gaps faster than they can be opened. In this new kind of war, hesitation is fatal. For armies and societies, failing to adapt is not merely losing a battle. It risks surrendering the very will to resist, the hope of survival itself, against an overwhelming and invisible force. The revolution of fire barrage. 2.0 is more than a change in weapons. It is a transformation in how war is imagined and waged. Understanding this shift is crucial for anyone who hopes to grasp the future of conflict. When war transforms into a data-driven, surgical endeavor, the consequences ripple outward, for generals, engineers, and civilians alike. Gone are the days when overwhelming barrages decided battles. In their place stand the primacy of speed and precision. Networks, algorithms, and artificial intelligence now outpace raw numbers and brute force. The winner is the side that can see, decide, and strike first, with accuracy measured in inches and seconds. At the core of this revolution is a doctrine that fuses reconnaissance, strike capabilities, and command into a seamless, real-time loop. Drones sweep the landscape, sensors feed torrents of data to AI systems, and pinpoint artillery fires are coordinated in moments, not hours. The difference is profound. No longer just smarter munitions, but an interconnected mesh of eyes, brains, and weapons acting in concert. These breakthroughs do not stop at the edge of the battlefield. Technologies engineered for precision targeting, AI vision, secure communications, rapid data fusion, are seeping into everyday life. Self-driving vehicles, emergency response grids, and even banking networks now depend on these advances, shaped by the same imperatives of speed, reliability, and resilience. Civilian infrastructure mirrors military networks. For example, disaster relief increasingly relies on drone swarms to map damage, deliver supplies, and coordinate rescue teams. Hospitals adopt AI triage systems that mirror battlefield decision support software, prioritizing patients and allocating resources in real time. Logistic companies draw on military-grade secure communications to track shipments and prevent theft or cyber attack. Yet, a shadow follows this progress. Does the rise of surgical warfare truly spare lives, or does it simply make violence easier to wield and harder to see? When a single shell can target a specific window, is collateral damage genuinely minimized, or is it merely obscured by clinical data and distant screens? The ethics grow murkier as the means grow cleaner. Strategically, the battlefield itself dissolves into unpredictability. Swift, decisive breakthroughs become possible, while static defenses and slogging trench wars fade into obsolescence. Those slow to adapt risk irrelevance, as algorithms undermine old certainties and fortifications crumble before networked, adaptive assault. Consider historical transitions. At the dawn of the 20th century, armies dismissed tanks as novelties. Air power was considered a sideshow. Those who ignored these revolutions, like France clinging to the Maginot Line, found themselves bypassed and defeated. Today, the refusal to embrace digital doctrine could prove even more catastrophic. The momentum now drives toward autonomy. Artificial intelligence is poised to analyze, choose, and even strike with minimal human input. The decision cycle shrinks to milliseconds. War becomes less a clash of armies, more a contest of code, cognition, and information flows. Falling behind in this transformation means more than losing ground in firepower. It is a forfeiture of leadership in technology, ethics, and policy, ceded to whoever learns fastest. The future of security, and the very shape of conflict, is being forged by those who master the art of the networked, intelligent strike. But with every leap forward in warfare, new risks and dilemmas emerge, ones that cannot be solved by technology alone. The question is not just how these tools are used, but who controls them, and to what end. A single doctrine can reshape not just battlefields, but the very fate of nations. Will you seize that power, or let the future decide for you? The revolution of fire barrage. 2.0 was never merely about smarter bombs or sleeker drones. It marked a turning point, a shift from brute force to surgical precision, from endless barrages to targeted strikes. With real-time data and invisible networks, artillery became less a distant roar and more an omnipresent scalpel, cutting through defenses with uncanny accuracy and speed, leaving psychological scars long after the echoes fade. To make this revolution practical, armed forces must adapt every level, from doctrine to logistics. Training must emphasize not just gunnery skills, but data analysis, rapid targeting, and cybersecurity. Command structures must flatten, empowering junior leaders to act on real-time intelligence without bureaucratic delay. Supply chains must evolve to deliver not only shells, but batteries, replacement drones, and secure communications gear. Imagine a scenario. A multinational task force deploys to halt an advancing armored column threatening a city. In the old paradigm, planners would mass artillery for days, risking detection and counterattack. Now, a handful of forward observers and drones pinpoint enemy vehicles, relaying coordinates to a dispersed network of howitzers. Within minutes, precision-guided shells neutralize the threat, allowing ground troops to advance without delay or collateral damage. Such operations hinge on meticulous coordination, constant training, and a culture of innovation. Yet here lies the danger. Those who hesitate or cling to old doctrines risk more than lost territory. They risk irrelevance, even erasure. In a world ruled by precision and networks, those who lag behind lose not only ground, but the power to shape what comes next. Security and survival are being redefined, and the price of inertia is paid in futures, not just in casualties. This transformation reaches beyond generals and soldiers. Military breakthroughs bleed into civilian life, reshaping emergency response, logistics, and even the devices in your palm. The technologies of war become the backbones of society, for better or worse. The choices we make, as individuals, as communities, will determine whether we master these advances or find ourselves living in a world built by others, for others. Looking forward, the questions multiply. Will artificial intelligence one day authorize lethal force without human oversight? How do societies maintain transparency and accountability in an era where war is waged by algorithms? What safeguards can ensure that the tools of precision do not become instruments of tyranny or perpetual surveillance? Nations will need to invest not only in hardware, but in the ethical frameworks and international agreements that govern their use. Just as the Geneva Conventions sought to regulate the horrors of 20th century warfare, so too must the world develop norms for the age of intelligent, networked conflict. Civil society, technologists, and policymakers must engage now, before the pace of change outstrips our ability to guide it. As the dust settles on the doctrines of the past, a final question remains. Will you be a bystander, or will you help define the next chapter? In this crucible of change, agency is everything. The future is not written yet, unless you let someone else hold the pen.